Okay, guys, as I was saying, I've been with Microsoft for quite a while, 27 years. Most of that time actually in the developer division. So I've been working on Visual Studio, the .NET Framework, and SQL Server. So what I've got here is in Power BI, a report that I actually built. Jerry knows this, but you guys don't. I'm a pretty avid fisherman. I enjoy going out and fishing, and I might go out and buy lures or want to know how many fish they caught. One thing I plan on doing is using AI Builder where I can take a picture of it. It would actually go out and tell me what lure it was. And that way, if I'm on a boat and somebody's catching a lot of fish, I can go out and spend a bunch of my hard-earned money on other lures at that point. And what I might want to do that you can't do in Power BI is actually order the lure directly inside the report. So I see that maybe Biblis, it looks like I'm actually looking at the cost, but maybe it caught more fish and I want to order one of these Biblis. Or maybe the Candace lure, is not performing as well and I need to sell more or get more inventory, whatever the case is. You guys, I'm sure, have looked at Power BI and had scenarios where you wanted to adjust the data that you're looking at in situ, and Power BI simply doesn't allow you to do that. Does that make sense for everybody? All I can see is the gentleman in the orange jacket who's trying to get onto the Wi-Fi and playing with his phone. So I'm going to ask him if that makes sense to you.
It makes perfect sense.
Okay, good. So it makes perfect sense to him. So what I'm going to do.
Chuckle, no problem shaming it. Don't worry. You can shame him back. Me too.
All right. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a Power App in the middle of this, and we're going to go out and do some crazy things that you can't do inside of Power BI, like order data, maybe even doing a refresh in a report. So let's go ahead and see if I can edit this. So let's go out and what am I actually in? Oh, I'm actually in a dashboard. So let me go to the report itself, and let's just move this tree view. I need to actually edit the page, edit report, and move this out of the way so we actually have a little bit of room, and I'll put it right, I don't know, I'll put this up here, just so it's still there and you guys can see it, and I'll make this 92 smaller. Okay, so right here, I'm going to put a big order form in there. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and drag in the Power Apps custom visual. So I don't know if you guys saw it, it was a purple icon right there. It is going to be a core visual. If you don't see it yet, because I actually don't think it is, what you need to do is you're going to need to go to the marketplace and say import from market. And if you're new to Power BI, I'm sure that there's somebody there that can help you. Just type in Power Apps and hit search, and maybe Power Apps. How about if I put a space in it? Oh, actually, I guess it's been taken out of the Power BI visuals because it is now a core visual. Okay, that's good. So you shouldn't have to add it. If you're finding it's missing, let me know. Send me an email at chaz@microsoft.com and we'll actually run it down. But this was something that was intended. I just didn't know if it had happened this week or not. So it looks like it's now a core visual. It's no longer a custom visual. And if you read the directions, it says how to get started. Step 1, select the fields. So let's just go ahead and add all of these fields. And I'll add them right here. And boom, boom, boom. Okay. I don't know that I need them all. And I think I'm going to put this in the environment that I'm actually been building the stuff in, which is like premium demo tenant. This is actually the one I created for the MVP. So Jerry should have access to this. Also has a Power BI premium capacity. So if you guys want to demo this or take a look at it, Jerry should have access to this if you want to look at Power BI Premium. So at this point, I can say choose an app or create new. In my demo, I'm going to create a brand new one. And if you're not familiar with Power Apps, I heard that there's a Power BI Tableau person. This is actually an environment for creating applications for doing editing and collecting of data for the most part. Or I guess I could go out and do visualizations, but in that case, it might be better for animations than Power BI. At this point, it says, hey, do I want a form or a gallery? Let's go ahead and hit skip. And the data that you're seeing here is the data from that Power BI report. And it's coming in across this from this Power BI integration object. And I can go ahead and change those fields from a date. And if I change it to like name, you can see that those are my lure names. And again, those are coming in from my Power BI report. In this case, we're actually not going to use a gallery, which is actually what came across. We're going to use a form. And yeah, there was one, or I could have had it create one, but I just want to show you what that looks like. entirely from scratch. I hate demoers that go out and in 2 clicks they have rebuilt eBay, because they've actually brought in all these pre-built pieces and this little tiny snippet of code that works out to be a couple thousand pages. So this is literally from scratch, and this was actually brought in for me as me hitting File New. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in an edit form, and the first thing it's going to say is, what data do you want to use? So the data source is empty. Now, that report, I didn't talk about much about the report, is based on a SQL Azure that's using direct query. If you don't know about Power BI, there's roughly 3 ways Power BI can show you data or connected data. One is direct query. One is a live connection to an analysis services. And the last one is import. So this one's doing a direct query. The data stays in that SQL server, and we go out and take a look at a semi-live view of it in that SQL server. Okay, so that's what's happening underneath the covers. And what we need to do is go to all the connectors, and we need to see if we can find us a SQL one. So there's a SQL Server one. And it looks like it already has some connections for me. That report, I happen to know, and it's going to save me a little bit of typing, is looking at my Power Platform Demos SQL Server instance. So I'm going to go ahead and select that one. And in this case, it already cached my credentials, so it's not asking it. That report is based off of this table called orders. So in this example, I'm actually having my Power Apps run against the same data set. It doesn't need to be the case. It's often where I demo, where I bring in one data set that might be the master to go out and show the details of my Power Apps. So I have 2 different tables, or have a relationship that actually isn't in the same data store at all. What might that be? I might have a state names, and then I have another data source that lists all of the companies inside of each state, a master detail metaphor. Okay, so let's go ahead and choose connect. If I choose edit fields at this point, I should see, am I not getting this? There we go. I should see a flyout that didn't occur a second ago. And it's asking me, much like Power BI does, what fields do I want to play with in my Power App? Let's go ahead and say amount, because that's important. Date, ID. Actually, let's just check them all and say add. So what we're going to see at this point is where I can go out and put data in. Now, I could also have edited it. So there's a couple different nodes where I could go out and say new form, or I could go out and say edit. In this case, I want to put new values in as if I were emulating an order form. Now, in this case, I like actually using the icons. I'm becoming more and more of a fan of icons. So if I put in the right data, I want to go ahead and say yes. And I actually want to go out and have the UI say where I can add a new value. So let's actually use those. And on my on select, I'll say new, I think it is, new form. And the form, I only have that one. And that's the one I did an insert from, if you guys were watching. Now this one here, I go out and simply submit that data. And I'm going to do some magical stuff here as well. Was there a question, Jerry? Nope. I think I heard no, and go ahead. Okay, and the next one here is I can go ahead and say, now that I've submitted the form, I want to refresh my report. So if I go out and say Power BI integration, you'll see there's a refresh object, and I can go ahead and ask it to refresh it. Okay, let's save this. Save this as the Jerry. Oh wait, he said it wasn't the Jerry user group, it's the KC user group.
Thank you.
And I'm going to make it, what's the color? No, Cincinnati's red. You guys are blue, actually.
Red for the Chiefs.
Okay, red for the Chiefs. All right. Go Chiefs. All right. And I can go ahead and hit save. And now at this point, you really, really want to share it with the people who are going to be looking at that Power BI report. Now, it's not as clean right now as that you're going to have to go out and manually share it with the same people as your workspace in Power BI. And we are cleaning that up. We're actually redoing all this code that you're looking at. And this is going to be much cleaner, where we're actually going to read who you've got the workspace shared with. So that way, these people aren't going to actually see a what is it? The loading icon if you didn't have access. So at this point, a little while ago, this was empty. I don't know if you remember, Mr. Orange Jacket. Oh, I have a better view now. I can see multiple people. Okay. At this point, I should be able to hit this plus button, and I now see my app running, and I can go out and say amount. So it looks like I want to have a Bobby Brown. Bobby Brown's a great marlin lure. If you guys, oh, what's happening here? I didn't like that. All right. Let's come back and visit that one. So it was bought in 2019 or something like that. Apparently. And let's see if I get some numbers in here. Okay, there we go. 34. ID just needs to be a unique one. It's my primary key from my table, so that's going to be my unique name. Kansas City is clearly where I'm going to be buying this marlin lures because there's a lot of need for marlin lures in Kansas City. And I'm going to make it a Bobby Brown as well. And then the photo is whatever. So now when I hit OK here, this is going to be subtle, guys. I need you to pay attention. Bobby Brown has got this little value right here, and we'd expect it to kind of bounce out here. But this is a report. Reports are not real time. They just added a feature where you can go out and have it do like minute refreshes. But you're going to see that this is actually going to happen on the click of this button. So this is something you cannot do outside of Power Apps. And that feature where you can do refreshes just got shipped a week and a half ago. So this is actually the only way you could have actually updated your reports until now. Okay, so actually, also you'll see that there's no dot in the middle of Kansas City. If I hit that, there should be a dot in the middle of Kansas City. And you should actually, there's my white dot. And I should see Bobby Brown is now all the way up here. By the way, I'll pause if you guys want to applaud or give me a big round of applause. Okay. So this is stuff that you cannot do in Power BI. So this is a better together scenario where it just kind of makes sense to put them together. There's lots of other scenarios. If we've got time, we'll come back and maybe we'll build one from scratch using a different data set. The other one that I wanted to show you was if we go back to apps, and let's just create an app from scratch. So there's a couple different types of apps. Right now there's 3. Coming soon in, what is it, January, there's going to be a 4th type. Is it even in January? Yeah, in January there'll be a 4th type. But right now we're going to go ahead and build a new Canvas app. That's the last one that we've been playing with. And I want to do some other things that you cannot do in Power BI. So let's make it a tablet layout. Now, one thing that is not uncommon to get asked is, I want to go out and use different visuals or different tiles from different workspaces. Power BI will not let you do that. That is not something Power BI will let you do. So what am I talking about there is maybe I want this tile from this workspace, but if I go out and take a look at my Amsterdam workspace, maybe I want, I don't know, whatever tile it's going to take me, the Avanade dashboard. It's always terrifying when I open this up. You can see there's another Avanade. Oh, maybe I want this tile in there, but you cannot in Power BI have a single pane or dashboard, if you will, from multiple workspaces. Power Apps, you can make that really easy. Let's show you how you can do that. So you can go ahead and go to Insert and go to, we moved it last week, to Charts. It's not called Power BI Tile. And I can go out and choose different workspaces. So let's go ahead and, I don't know, we'll just grab Chaz at random. We'll see if I have any dashboards. I have a Nix dashboard. Actually, let's grab this. Yeah, let's see what's a Nix dashboard. Flight number. Okay, so not the most exciting, but you're going to see that we're going to get that in a second. So let's go ahead and in my Power BI, you'll see that there is a new property that we've added not too long ago called tile URL. I can go out and copy this. Let's do that. And we'll put that into a button. And somebody, who's the lady that walked in late, second row back on the right, on my right, in behind the person that's follically challenged? Who's that?
Blonde hair.
Yeah, blonde hair. Who is that person?
I think you mean
yes.
me. I came in late.
Okay. So you, Mimi, that voice, you're going to be in charge of counting the lines of code that Chuck has to write. So I should have given you this job earlier, but how many lines has it been so far? Let's just keep track where we're at thus far. All right, we'll come back as you start counting. You may have to take off your shoes to count them all, but we'll see how we go. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go out and type in something called set. Set is actually how you create a variable or how you set a variable, I guess is to be very accurate, in Power BI. So I can go ahead and say set my var equal. And do you remember how I got that tile URL? Do you remember where I got that? It was from this guy. Yeah. Okay. What I'm going to do is I'm going to grab that button. I'm going to paste that button here. And let's go ahead and set this out to something else. So if I go out and take a look at that data and say, I don't want it to be from that Chaz one, but we've been playing with World Tour. I think is where we're at. World Tour. World Tour. There it is. And in there, we were looking at the retail analysis, I think is what I was playing with. And I have this Chuck's look at sales. I think this is a map. Yeah. So this one's kind of important because Power Apps doesn't have a map control yet. But by using the Power BI map visuals, there's 4 of them that are built in as core visuals. I can take advantage of lots of different maps. So here's a map in Power Apps. Well, Power Apps doesn't have a map. So there's again, another scenario that things that you just can't do on Power Apps by itself. And I want to grab this URL and do something like this. Oh, way too many quotes. Oh, right here. Okay. Now, if I go back out here and say, I don't want you to look at that string, I want you to look at something called myvar. And I get rid of this stuff. And then I run my application. And I hit this button, I would expect to see a map from one workspace. And if I hit this button, I would expect to see a number from a different workspace. So that's pretty cool. What I can also do that is Power BI can do it. It's just a little bit more powerful here. It's different. I can do different things here. Is let's say that I don't want to take a look at just all the area in the map. I want to look at one particular area. So let's go ahead and copy this button a couple more times. And something like, oh, I don't have enough room for that one, so he goes away. And what we're going to do is we're going to have him, she'll say all, this little button, that one's going to say, I don't know, I think I have data in DE, and I think I have some other data in North Carolina, where our good friend Belinda Allen's from. She from North Carolina, South Carolina? That doesn't matter. Where our friend is from. And now what I could do is at the end of this big ugly string, I can add some filter parameters. Now it's OData syntax. I never remember what that is. So I created a quick link to remind me. So if I go to aka.ms / PA in, no, it's PBI in PA. And I'm going to put that into the chat window. That's not what I wanted. Try that again. Control C. Paste. Okay. When I hit enter, it should take me to a blog post. I'm usually pretty good about wanting to enable other people to do this stuff. And Mr. Orangecoat, can you make sure that you can get access to this? If not, I'll fix it up.
Remember how you were trying to get me to go to the internet? I'm not able to get to it.
You have lots of missions today. That you're right. So Jerry's going to pay you twice as much as money as everybody else. Does that sound fair? Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, And this actually uses a different data set. But I think I actually have that syntax that I need, which is something like that. So if I go back to my app and I paste that, and I maybe paste this one here, and I change that to be DE, I now should be able to replay this, and I should look at all my states, or all the data from all my states, because it has no parameter. This one should actually just show me what's happening in Delaware. Is that Delaware? Let's pretend that that was Delaware, if it's not. And if this one should show me the stuff, oh, I can actually see the word North Carolina, so that one's pretty accurate. So this is a case where I can reach across workspaces, I can add filters, and I can go out and do things. At the Vancouver World Tour, I went out and did some silly stuff that made it look like Power BI should have been able to do. I added spark lines, and if you guys, actually there's a Tableau person in the room. Can you explain what small multiples are?
He's talking about like spark lines that we're talking about, doing a little spark line different.
Yeah, spark line's a little bit different. Small multiples is when you want to go do multivariate data analysis, like you have two sets of data here, one's blue, one's black. And what Tableau does a very elegant job of, hats off to them, is that they will actually go out and not show you one map, they'll actually show you like 4 different maps, one for every different type of a dimension. So you actually don't try to conflate the data into one visual, you actually have multiple versions of that visual. And Power Apps makes it so I can actually convert a big visual into little visuals. You know, it's a little bit of effort on my part, but it's not a lot of effort. I would actually venture to say it's probably easier than Tableau story points, which is how you used to have to do it. So that is actually 2 ways of integrating Power BI and Power Apps. And what I wanted to do, again, at this point, it's a choose your own story version. I can go out and show you how we can go out and use Flow, or maybe we could go out and build an app from scratch that uses real-time data sets. So who would like to take a look at a Flow demo? Hands up. I can only see 3 people, so I'm going to so I see the 3 people.
Go with the flow.
Go with the flow. All right. So if we go back into a dashboard, let's go out and use that World Tour one, because I think it actually had. Here it is.
Is that fair? 3 copies. So if you click copy and paste, can you get
You know, you're going to have to probably repeat the questions for me, Jerry. I hear people talking. I can't hear what the question is.
So we've got 3 lines of code so far with some.
We got 3 lines of code. Okay, good. So I'm glad someone is still on point. Okay. And in this case, I'm looking at a dashboard that actually has lots of different visuals. And what might be a pretty common scenario, that actually is a very common scenario, is that people want to get notified if they exceed or actually maybe underperform certain thresholds. For instance, if I have had 22 million in sales, maybe I want to get notified if it actually falls below 19 million. Or maybe I actually want to go out and celebrate if it gets over 25, right? So those are actually called alerts. So I can go out and manage alerts. Now in Power BI directly, I can go out and notify one person based on a set of conditions. Usually what I want to do is go out and interrogate the data and make a different set of conditions on how the magnitude of whether or not I'm over or under. Using the previous example, I said I want to get notified if I'm over 25 million. Maybe if I actually get over 30 million, I want to call my accountant and say invest or whatever. Or if I get over 50 million, I want to email my boss and say, hey, I'm done. That was my number. I'm retired. You get the point, right? So make different decisions based on different magnitudes. What I can go ahead and do is if I get above, I don't know, 22 million, we'll actually take that. It won't. So I need to go out and put all the correct number of zeros here. So if I go out and do whatever the correct number of zeros is, this alert will fire. So let's go ahead and save that. So this is called the this year's sales inside a world tour, and that's going to be kind of important. We're going to have to find this silly alert at some point. Let's go out and actually I want to kind of hit this button. Let's see what that button does, or this link. And let's say save and close. Now, if I go out and find, well, there we go. So what that did is it started Microsoft Flow, and it already actually set up a trigger for my flow to be Power BI. And then it's going to go out and say, hey, we're going to do whatever you want to do next. In this case, we'll actually do something so simple like send email. And it still needs me to log in. If you're not familiar with Flow, we can actually start from scratch to show you how it got to that. So if you don't want to start with inside the Power BI experience, I could go ahead and say to my flows. And no, I've been playing with a bunch of connectors, so we don't want to fix that. And say instant from blank, I think is actually what I want. And the flow name is going to be KCUG2. And here it's going to go out and say, of all of my triggers, what do we want to use? So I said manual. So I guess it was an automated. It wasn't. I always get the instant versus automated versus scheduled. Do you have that confusion, Jerry, and Flow? Never. Okay. No. That's fine. People have always said that I'm a special child, so that's okay. I can fix anything, right? Being a special child. So what I can do is, this one says I'm going to manually trigger it. That's clearly not what I want. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. You go away, I win, Chuck wins, Flow loses. And what I can do is now type in Power BI. And I can actually see let's actually erase that. Let's take a look at all the different triggers I can do. So I wonder if there's a Jerry trigger. Yeah, there's a G trigger. And you get all these different ones. And my name is Chaz. What's under Chaz? And you get the point. So this is, hey, when something gets posted to YouTube, go out and record it, whatever. You get the example. In this case, we were taking a look at Power BI. And I can go ahead and say, when data-driven alert is triggered, right? We already created the alert, so what we can go ahead and do is say yes. And it says alert ID to track. Now I want to go out and say, what the heck is it looking for? Alert for amount. Does anybody know which one it was called?
This year's sales.
This year's sales. Thank you. I don't know who that was, but thank you. Okay, and then in this case, what you'd want to do is just send an email for the simplest case scenario of, hey, just let me know. So Outlook has actually got a bunch of different triggers, and one of those is send an email. And at that point, I can hard code this. But what you'd probably want to do is, I'm sure Jerry's actually done this because he's actually quite adept at actually doing conditions, where you'd actually go out and say, if the value is this, and you can actually go out and see these values here in a second. Let me actually pull that out. Okay, and type in that, and you can actually see here is the alert threshold. This is the amount, and then I could go out and actually put in the title and the URL to actually take me back to the dashboard. So that's actually going to get fired off when I get above 22 million or whatever the amount was. Now, the other action that we just added was the ability to go out and refresh a data set for import data sets. Remember I mentioned earlier that there are 3 types. There are live connections. So refresh doesn't make any sense because it's live. Direct query, what you want to do for direct query is refresh the visuals. So you don't really need to do that on the back end. But for those that are based on import, I need to go out and say, hey guys, I want your gateway to go out and pull the data and bring it back in. So I'm looking at fresh data when we open it up. What might be in a scenario of that is if I'm going to go ahead and grab data from my cash registers, and that may take anywhere from an hour to 5 hours. I only want to do the refresh after all my cash register data is actually been dropped into my SQL Server or dropped into whatever it is that you're putting it into, maybe even directly into the data set. But you don't want the refresh to occur from your desktop file back into your service until after that load's been accomplished. So let's show you that. It's a pretty simple boring. It's a pretty easy boring, or an easy one. But if I go ahead and go back to flows, say OK, and I say new, and I got it wrong last time. That's all right. I'm going to choose this one again. In this case, it's going to be, oh, actually, I like the SharePoint one. So if someone goes out and uploads files into SharePoint, maybe I'm actually using my Excel files in SharePoint and then importing them into my Power BI data, my Power BI report. That's really, really super common. So let's go ahead and say, hey, if someone goes out and takes a look at my dashboard in Day, adds a file into this library, I want you to then refresh the Power BI data set to pull this data back in. So what? I guess this one. Anyways, let's pretend that was for the file. Now in this case, you'll see that there's a brand new action for Power BI. And one of those is to actually refresh the data set. And all it's going and doing is asking, saying, of your workspaces, what data set do you want to refresh? So in this case, I think my airline performance workshop is actually indeed based on an Excel file that is in a SharePoint list, and I could actually go out and trigger that based on rows being added into that Excel file. So that was something that we just added 3 weeks ago when I was in Florida, was this refreshed data. So that's kind of cool. So let's go ahead and save that. The last one, how are we doing on time, Jerry?
Keep talking.
Keep talking.
No
one's gone home yet.
No one's gone home. Aren't you trapped in there due to the snow? This is going to be like Donner's party a little bit, right? The afternoon snack is not pizza. It's something a little bit more keto friendly. Okay.
We're doing weather-wise.
Okay. So let's go ahead and start with a brand new workspace. And I'll call this one KC. So workspace, if you're familiar with Power Apps, is like your environment. And if you guys are familiar with Power BI, Power Apps uses a different paradigm that's very similar to workspaces called environments. So it's kind of the same. So let's go ahead and create a brand new workspace called KC. Now what we're going to do in there is that we're going to go ahead and create a real-time streaming data set. I don't even think I put this in your abstract that we're going to do this, but it's something that I've been playing with that's kind of cool. Is we're going to go ahead and say create, and we're going to say streaming data set. And let's say that I want to do a water skiing scoreboard. You guys know anybody that water skis? I'm kidding. I'm joking. Water skiing scoreboard. Okay, so that's my data set name. And who would I have in my values of this? Maybe a contestant. And that's going to be more than likely text. And I'm going to go ahead and maybe have the score that they got. Actually, yeah, I would do score. So let's actually make that a number. Feet off is actually something that you do in water skiing, is how many feet off you can do a slalom course on. That would be a number. Probably the date that you actually did the competition would be interesting. You get the idea. So I'm creating a data set for real-time streaming data directly in Power BI. A lot of people don't know that this feature's here. And I want to make sure and turn this on. So if I don't turn this on, all I can look at is the last value that was pumped in. This one says I can look at the last 4 million rows. I think it's actually the threshold that we have. And at that point, I can say create. So I now have a real-time streaming data set inside of Power BI that I can play with. And if we go out and do something silly like, I don't know, let's have a new dashboard. And we'll call this one the KC dashboard. And we can go ahead and add a tile. And we're going to add a tile of streaming data and say next. And it says my water skiing data set, right? And it's going to say, hey, what data do you want to look at? Maybe we want to take a look at the score because that's the one we're mostly interested in. And in this case, we'll say apply. Now it's empty. That kind of makes sense because there's no data there. So what's the purpose of this presentation, guys? To look at how Power Apps and Power BI play together. I've already showed you how I can put things in a SQL server. Maybe we can actually use Flow to put things into other data sources. So let's go back to our Flow demo. And what we're going to do is we need a report to go out and put that Power BI the visual in there. You already saw me do some of that, so let's do that again. And what we're going to do is create a report. This button creates a report off of that data set. No, it doesn't. That actually gives me the usage data. Let's actually hit the right button. This button gives me a report off of that data set. So now I can go out and say, actually, let's get this score here too. I'm going to make it a card. The card, there's a card. So once again, my data is empty. But what we want to do here is I want this to be the average, not the sum. And I want to put, oh no, Control Z. That's something else Jerry's never done, is accidentally had a visual selected and then select a different type and change it on accident. At this point, all we need is actually probably that score one. And we're going to go ahead and change this to my environment that I want to use. And we're going to say create new. So this is, again, kind of that same demo. We're even going to use a card that's the same, but we're going to use Flow to actually put the data set or the data in there. Okay, we'll skip that. Get rid of you. Insert, you've already seen me do that. Forms, edit form. And then what we're going to do is for the data source itself. What are we going to actually play against? Let me think about this. Actually, I don't need a form. Let's not. I was just thinking, what's the best way of doing this? No, let's not even do that. Let's make it easy on ourselves. Let's do a text input and a text label, and this is going to be your score. So this is going to say score. And this is going to be, the hint text is going to be score here. And default is going to be empty. Okay. And then we're going to want that for contestant or water skier. Contestant. And then we need this here. And we'll say name here. Okay, so we need these scores to get input into this text box. Follow with me, Mr. Orange Jacket?
Yes.
Okay, good. And to do that, we used an icon last time. We're going to use a big ass button. And we're going to make it a blue one. Actually, no, we need to make it red because this is Kansas City. So we're going to go out and make it a red button. And we'll go out and make it a red button. Okay. Now our red button is going to go out and fire off a flow because you said you guys wanted more flows. Let's go with the flow. And we're going to go out and say create a flow. And just like you saw before, I had an option that says, when I click this button, do these things. So this is automatically wired for me. And call this one the Kansas City flow. My new step is going to be what do I want to do? We're going to push it into the Power BI dataset, right? And add rows to dataset. There is a flow action for that. What workspace is this? I think we called it Kansas City. KC is what we called it. The data set, there's only one there. It's the water skiing scoreboard. This is pretty easy. The table, since we didn't create it from the API, it actually named it for us. We're going to say ask for the contestant's name in there. The score, we're going to go out and say ask in Power Apps. This stuff we're not even using, so let's just hard code it. Hard code. Oh, actually, really good feet off is, what is it, 22 feet? If you could do 22 feet off on a slalom course, I think you're doing really good. Jerry could correct me there. Let's go ahead and grab the date too. I think date's probably important. So let's go ahead and grab that. Now, when I save that and I go back in here, I should see in this big long list, oh, it probably created in the wrong area. It did. Dang it, I hate that. So what we need to do is I need to put that flow, we need to create it into the right one. So we're going to get to see that demo all over again. And we're going to go out and say new, and we're going to go out and say, I don't know, instant from blank. I always get these wrong. Oh, today I didn't. And it's going to say Kansas City incorrect environment. All right. Let's just pretend someone said, hey, how did you do that again? Let's pretend that that had been asked. Oh, no, wrong one. Delete. Okay. Power BI, and it's add rows to data set. There we go. And once again, workspace is Kansas City. There it is. Data set is water skiing scoreboard. And the number of table is real-time streaming data. And the contestant is, once again, Ask and Power Apps. Score is Ask and Power Apps. Feet off, we're just going to hard code it to be 22. And date is important, so let's say Ask and Power Apps. Hit save. This time, we actually should find one that says Ask in Power Apps. No, it was Kansas City. Right. Now, what we should see is in the on select of the button, it went out and said Kansas incorrect environment, and it says, I want to know the contestant. We're going to go out and put that text box here. I think it was text box, text input, and this is second dot text. And this one we want to say text input, and we're going to use the first one. Come on, work with me. Text. And the last argument is the date. Let's just throw in now. I think that's right. Okay. So now when we run this, let's save it, and we'll run it from water ski in KC. If I go back in here, what we should see is after this saves, my little form being created. And as we put scores back in, let's actually put these on the dashboard so we can see all my tiles in the right place. KC report. And pin. I'm going to pin this one here as well. And okay. So now when I go out and put a score of 10, because you guys have been amazingly patient with me. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Apparently it's 12, not 10. I need to get this. And I am going to give Jerry the score of 12. When I hit the button, what I should see is 12s here and a 12 there, right? Now, let's say that Jerry on his next user group, he doesn't have Chuck come in. And clearly, without a Chuck, he's only going to get at best a 5. Okay, so what's happening here? First of all, we're putting data in through a flow, putting it into a real-time streaming data set. We're showing them in different times. Can anybody tell me why is the one with the lightning bolt come in faster than the one without the lightning bolt?
Streaming?
Yeah, so this is a streaming tile. And it's actually built into the dashboard itself. And this is actually using direct query back into what, in this case, happens to be another SQL Server instance that we've provisioned for you. But this is actually the direct query latency. This is real-time streaming tile latency. So that is a ton of demos on how to go out and put Power Apps, Flow, Power BI back together in lots of creative ways to solve problems that each of these products can't do all by themselves. So Jerry, that's kind of what I wanted to cover. If you guys wanted to cover other things, I'm happy to do that. But I did want to give you the microphone back.
Let's questions.
Oh, I do have a question. So what was the total line? What was the total line of code?
3, 4. Wait. Go ahead.
This is Michael. On the first example you had, you did the updating on the fly. Where did that data get saved? Did it rewrite the data or did it a new table?
Yeah, okay. So in that first example that I showed, let's actually reopen that one back up. It was actually something called World Tour. World Tour. And we were looking at, I think it was one of these. I don't know which one it was. Okay. It wasn't that one, but it was like this one. We'll find it one more time with images. Okay. Regardless, we were pushing in data. It was this report. This report is based off of a SQL Azure instance. When we went out and added that new Bobby Brown, which is the one that we added, that got added into a row here. So this Visual Studio, as I was playing with earlier, it doesn't even see the Bobby Brown that we added yet because we haven't refreshed it. But if you have me watch this, this is actually Visual Studio wired up to that same SQL Server instance. So the data is a new row that was added into that SQL Server for the first demo. In the last demo, it was pushed into a real-time streaming data set.
In the first demo, I could have had a do-nothing Canvas app that just had a button or a check mark on it, just to automatically refresh my data without asking for any inputs.
You're gonna have to ask the question one more time. You're breaking up real bad.
So in the example with the app, I could have a do-nothing Canvas app which set a checkbox. The only action is when I hit the check, I'm going to refresh my data without asking for any more input. Because it could be coming in from the CDS, let's say.
Correct. And there actually is a button kind of like that. That there's two types of refreshes in Power BI. This is a visual refresh. And for a direct query, I think that would do the same thing. But as a Power BI report designer, you don't really want to have people thinking about the Chrome outside of it. You probably actually want to make that go away. But yeah, your point is that you could go out and do a button that says just refresh it, a form, because you go out and have maybe an alert or maybe some other notification of the data itself that says, hey, it's time for the data to get that you should refresh it. And you could have a Power Apps that does nothing other than refreshing. Yes, that is correct.
So I have a flow that looks at CDS and it keeps track of new records as are created, and every time I get up to 15 new records that are created in CDS, the flow could then execute the refresh.
And that's actually the exact use case that we were thinking of is as people add things to SharePoint or Excel or new records, and you name your favorite data store here, that's when I want to update Power BI and do a refresh, not an arbitrary time that says every half hour, because it doesn't make any sense to do a refresh if no new data has been added. Well, that's exactly correct, Jerry.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? And move my back. It's open season with Chuck. You can just ask him